My name is Kate Kolfalo-Golodzi, the author of a book titled December 2000. Welcome to Authentic Conversation with Kate. Today's episode is Beneath Healing. And for us to go through it, I am with Dipuo Zulu, the founder and the CEO of Consciously Becoming. Today we'll be talking transformation, development, and everything. So please join us as we are to unpack issues of trauma and how it affects how we show up. Says Dipuo, welcome to the show, and how are you?
Thank you so much for inviting me, and I am doing well. It's a pleasure to be here, and I can't wait to explore what we're going to unpack together. But I know it's going to be a fruitful journey and for everyone.
I'm gunning for that. Before we go on, can you please just give us an outline of the work that you do, especially in terms of trauma and leadership transformation? Can you just take us through?
Okay, so as introduced, I am Dipuo Zulu, and what I do and represent is that I come from Consciously Becoming, where we deal with wellness, mental health, and also transformation. So the behind umbrella of it is centered and focused about self-actualization and the healing of individuals. And what we do is to make sure that when one is going through their transition of life, they try to go through a lot of challenges, and we then come in and say, can we be your safe space? Can we be your accountability partner and walk this journey with you so that you can ultimately be the best version of yourself and be able to lead life from that angle?
I must say, I love the work that you do. And I think I love it because I felt like if maybe I had someone to walk through the journey with me at an earlier stage of my life, I believe that I could have been a better person. Authentic Conversation podcast is more about bringing conversations that are real, that are affecting real people, and also coming up with ways of really impacting the community and the people in the society in terms of how do they navigate their life. Today's episode is more on beneath the smile, and this topic specifically because I will speak to my experience, and I even wrote about it in my book in December 2000 to say there was a time where I would cry, and I'll cry at night, and I will do whatever that I do in my space, but then I'll show up again in the world. So this topic is specifically because there are people who are taking their lives on daily basis. I remember there was someone who took their life. It was a guy I remember very well, and he wrote that even if I told you, you were not going to understand. And we lose people, and it affects so many lives and families. So we brought you here today to specifically go into deep issues of trauma and how it affects people. My story has been a very traumatic story. Hence, I wrote the book December 2000. If you read a book December 2000, it speaks about a young girl who got assaulted, who had to deal with issues of being diagnosed with HIV, who had to be a teenage mother and a mother of three. But at the end of the day, they fought, and then they became where they are. Trauma affected me in so many ways, but I need you maybe just to unpack how does trauma affect people in different ways, and what is needed from us to really come back and come out of that smile and have an authentic smile, not a smile covered with pain and everything.
As Kate, you're raising something that is very important in the journey of life. I would like to believe that everyone tends to experience trauma at some point of their journey, even though they might not know. So for me, I would start off to say, what is trauma? For me, I would say trauma is your emotional or psychological response to the circumstances or the events that transpire in your journey of life. So it could be acute trauma where you experience it once, like a car accident or an assault. It could be a chronic trauma where it's something that is persistent in your journey and it's countless over time, over a long period of time. This could be someone who's raped. This could be someone who's experiencing domestic abuse. We also have developmental trauma that you have in your early infant stages growing up as a young child, and it affects your age development from 1 till 7. that becomes an imprint of how you navigate life because of what you have been exposed to as a young child. And it formulates and comes up when you're an adult. And that's how you respond and react to the world. And your behavior then is a result of that trauma you've experienced. We also then have trauma that is actually as a result of things that we can engage in. We would highlight your sexual assault, we could highlight rape, we could highlight abuse, whether being it physical, emotional. And one of the things that people are not aware of is also secondary trauma, where you are seeing someone being abused, seeing someone experiencing GBV, and or seeing someone get hurt. That also inflicts some level of trauma in your own journey. And this is something that not a lot of people are aware of, but it creates something within you that when you engage with the world, you react from that level of trauma.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's something that someone said to me. It's more about 90% of what happened to you and 10% of what is happening to you. I found myself fighting I felt like after I was traumatized, I lost, especially my esteem was very bruised. And I lost self-respect, especially because I was sexually assaulted. And I felt like, oh, if they can do this to me, then why not just give it away? And I felt like for the longest time, I lost my voice. And something that I've also picked up was like, my mind logged from the day I was sexually assaulted when I was 9 years old. Because I remember I forgot a lot of things. Like I wanted to forget that night so bad that I forgot everything that happened before that night, including the dreams that I had. And that how trauma affected me. But sometimes people don't understand when you show up in a certain way, you are responding to trauma. And people don't, like society, especially our society, we end up judging people to say, oh, they're doing this because they like this, they're weak, they're all those kind of things. But they don't go into deep of what really happened to you. I think maybe you're bringing a very important topic there.
You know, when you highlight that, you also take me to a point where when you highlight the fact that your memory, then it became locked. You could not actually remember or recall the memories where you are at or the things that you are exposed to. This is actually a signal where when a person experiences trauma, then they shut down. And when they shut down, remember, trauma is tied with a person's nervous system. This is how you regulate your emotions, how you react, how you take decisions, how you behave. And with that, what happens is that you end up being in a space where now you don't want to recall what happened. Your nervous system is now trying to survive and find safety. And the best possible way is to shut down anything that hurts you, that brings or inflicts pain in your journey. And you tend to then forget everything from the past. As you move on with life, it's like I'm suppressing everything, but I'm not actually dealing with it. So your inability to actually challenge the mental health aspect, your healing journey, is what made the recurrent and perpetual journey of you forgetting. So, in terms of your mind space, you shut down because you want to forget.
Yeah.
But that is something that continues to live within you.
Yeah, like you're like, I don't want to remember that night. Like for me, something that came out like was shame. Like it brought so much shame to my life, and I struggled with it. That's why my self-esteem was so much affected, because I felt so shameful. Like the deeds for me, you know, when we grow up, although we are not sexually active and we are young and everything, but we are told that sex is a sin, it's a dirty thing, it's a shameful thing. And when it finally happens to you and you have not planned it, you are young, and like it happened to you without even giving consent to it, and then you are covered with shame. That affected me for the most of my life. And I grew up in this shell that I can't even get out and fight, be me and shine the way I wanted to shine, because I was always ashamed of this inner child that I was trying to protect. But the other thing is that you have to show up. You have to show up to the world. You have to come out with a smile. And beneath the smile, there's this pain, there's this wounded young girl that you never wanted to visit because that girl reminds you of your pain, reminds you of everything. So trauma is really a very painful thing, and it impacts life, and it impacts even how you show up, even in parenting, how you. With me, I was always scared that this will happen to my kids again. And I was a very overprotective parent. It's not a good thing. Yes, it's a good thing to be overprotective, but to always jump to conclusion when even a little slight thing comes through, you're like, oh, maybe what happened to me happened to her. So those are the societal challenges that we're faced with. I don't know, in your line of experience, how can you bring it to life?
So, with what you're highlighting, what happens is that in your journey, remember your nervous system is saying, I'm trying to understand and regulate this. I'm looking for safety and I'm looking for a way to survive. Because at a certain point, when the traumatic event happened, I wasn't protected, I wasn't safe, and I could not actually be in a space where I am vulnerable with my emotions to share them and people will understand. So the part and aspects of you feeling guilty, feeling like there's shame, is you in a way not knowing how the next person would perceive this thing, because when you label it, it's something within the society is not an acceptable act. And someone else could say, probably this is something she wanted.
Yeah.
Probably she was wearing something short. Probably she provoked the person. Probably she gave out mixed signals on it. But you find that those things are things that happen even without you even having to take any initiative. I mean, let's take, for example, a child who's like 4 years old or 6 years old, who does not have the huge understanding of the world and cannot comprehend much, but they get raped, or 2 years of age. What did that poor child do to get into that position? So, as a young child, when that event happened, then what we call is that you become trapped. You grow up with a journey where you are not healing. You show up as a mom at a certain point, but that little 9-year-old is still trapped within you. As when you navigate life, she comes out because she seeks surviving, she seeks safety, she seeks stability. And you find that in most cases, even in how you show up as a parent, you see it as a spotlight to say, okay, as a parent, I'm doing something great for my child, but you don't realize that you are actually maybe also wounding your children because you are showing up as an unhealed version of a parent, and you are inflicting more harm, and you are causing trauma to your own kids. So the healing journey is something that is crucial and needs to take place. So your nervous system moves from surviving to actually thriving.
That's what I speak about when I say I used to value and worship the word resilient, and until I learned that actually being resilient means you just need to thrive. And I go for transformation, because transformation now takes you to making some changes. Resilient for me means like you need to have like ways to survive, always ready for another pain. And transformation means change. It means like you move away from having to survive but going to. And I feel like the most of my time, especially because from getting assaulted when I was 9, and then I moved, and then I was assaulted again when I was 12. At 16, I became a mother. It was also traumatic. Like being a teenage mother is very traumatic, especially because you get isolated from the society. You are even a disappointment even to your family. Your family is very disappointed in you. They expected so much from you, but you bought this. And moving from being a teenage mother, and then I got infected with HIV. That was another traumatic event. And also having to struggle around issues of finance. I was the first person to work at my family. Then I had to be a sole financial provider until I had a breakdown, which took like 17 years, because I got assaulted when it was 2020, 2000, and then I got the first mental breakdown, and when I was 17, in 2017. So it was 17 years gap. But when I started to get into the journey of healing, I realized that it was everything picking up to the day that I had a breakdown. Everything that happened, teenage motherhood, and everything that happened took place. Took like it piled up until 17 years later, where it showed up. But throughout 17 years, you could see that, oh, this girl is happy. That's why you see someone very happy today and you get shocked that they killed themselves the following day. So even with me, I carried that pain for 17 years and I started healing in 2017. So it was a journey of the pain being piled up and everything. I I I I don't know how, because when I started my healing, we had to go back to my 9 year old. It was not easy for me to go back because it was a chapter that I really wanted to close and run away from. And I thought, oh, I've dealt with this because but when I started the healing journey, I had to go back to this young 9 year old and knock that door, the very painful door that I never thought I'll have to open. I never have thought I'll have to go through. But so many people are not healed even today. They're not even aware that they're carrying this much trauma. You said we experience trauma from different perspectives and different experience. Some, they were traumatized by the environment that they grew up in. Some, they were traumatized by things that happened to them, or the secondary trauma that you're talking about. So when we speak to the society, what can we say in terms of trauma and the importance of really looking into your gene? Because especially Black societies, you go to your mother, I'm like, I want to go to a psychologist, and they will say, Wagafawen. And if you go to the psychologist, speak to the psychologist, be honest and open with the psychologist. Let's say they're there. And then they will say, why are you not telling us this? And they don't understand that there are issues that we cannot say to them. What do you say to the society in terms of the importance of healing? I always say healing is a must.
As Kate, I feel that in a society where we come from, the reason why so much healing is not taking place is simply because people are not even certain that they need to heal.
Yeah.
So, with trauma comes with a level of self awareness.
Yeah.
If you are not aware, you cannot heal that which you do not know. So, the first step with society comes from what are you actually exposed to that will allow you that form of healing? And when I say exposure, I'm just simply by talking the space where you can feel confident to speak without feeling judged, and a space where you can share and you know you will be heard, but equally so, you will receive direction that becomes an impactful thing in your own personal journey. So we find ourselves in situations where we share things with family. They cannot relate.
Yeah.
Because sometimes they are the perpetrators to where we find ourselves. They have not healed. How do you expect to heal from them in the same environment? We speak to friends. They cannot even understand your pain because they don't understand the journey that you're on. But most importantly, we know with friends, they could actually share what you've shared with them. And this sometimes then becomes another traumatic experience where you are violated of the level of trust that you have in people.
Yeah.
So you don't trust.
Yeah.
But one of the important things I would like to say, with someone who's sitting somewhere and not even sure how to navigate this journey, the first step is starting in writing.
Yeah.
There's a power of just writing your story to yourself. Whether it is an event that transpired, take a notebook, write how you felt, how you feel this journey, then looking at it now, I get you are detached,
Yeah.
to empower you and not actually take strength from you. And you will see with certain things like that, even morning affirmations, just affirming yourself to say, I am not this, I am that. It has a great impact in terms of your outlook for the day. This is not with anyone's intervention, by the way, just yourself. Because the work starts with you. I can sit here as a psychologist, but if you're not ready to receive that level of help within yourself, it would not do justice to your journey because you will still not accept it. So to the young guy or the young little girl who's trapped inside because of trauma, because of their experience and their journey, what I could say to them is that find some level of foundation that you strengthen yourself in and grounds you. And foundation could be anything, whether it is God, spirituality, however you name it or label it. That is your safe space to start your healing, but also accepting your current reality. Acceptance will breed that and will create room for other steps that you initiate in your journey for healing.
You know, what you are saying is you are emphasizing on issue of generational healing, that we need to heal. And I like that, because if we don't heal, we pass it to the next generation and it becomes a way of life. And I love how you're bringing it to say we really need to work on ourselves. I also like the fact that you're speaking of, if you yourself are not ready to receive the services, no matter how exposed you are. Because I remember I started counseling in 2010 actually, at Mokopane Hospital. That was my first encounter with counseling. But by then I did not understand it, because all I wanted was my story to be told. And I remember I went to Tower FM and I had a conversation with the late Paul Rapetsa. And then when I had a conversation with him, he said to me, you know what, you need to see a therapist. I went to a therapist because he said it, but I did not understand why I need to go to therapist until 2017. So the whole 7 years of my engagement with therapists was a waste, because it didn't do any impact. I even had a mental breakdown in 2017. And I like when you're bringing about writing, because I always say part of my healing was when I wrote my book, December 2000. It was a huge part of my healing, because that was the only space that was authentic and realistic and honest and to yourself. It's that time when you have like a conversation with yourself without anyone judging you, and it's between you and you. You don't have to write for publishing, but you can write to just take your thoughts and everything that is heavy in your heart down on the paper. I like what you're bringing. I somehow really agree with you about what you're bringing. The other element that I would like to bring is like, how do we then talk about generational healing? Because in my journey, there was a time that I was so angry at my mother, and because of the things that I thought were not good, the things that I said, my mother is failing me on one, two, three, four. And there was a time I was not even speaking to her. That's how deep it went. But then I learned to understand that it's because she did not do the work herself. She did not heal. That's why she's showing up the way she's showing up to me as a mother. And I forgave her for that. And after forgiving her, I also healed myself, because anger is one of the diseases that we carry through trauma. We become so angry at the world. I remember I was angry at everyone. I was angry that I was assaulted at my home, where everyone was there and no one noticed. I was angry that no one noticed because I remember post the incident, I'll cry without no reason. I'll just sit there and cry. And no one really, I felt like no one came through and said, what's wrong? And get to crack everything that was eating me. For 17 years, no one knew what had happened to me. You get it? So I became very angry, but my point of forgiveness came when I realized that we are all carrying a different trauma. We are all carrying a different pain. It depends on what you do. So my healing was very intentional, because working on myself, working on my healing, it was me healing the generations that comes after me. So how do we then bring people who did not work on themselves to the conversations of healing? I don't know for me.
It makes sense. Like you highlighted something when you say in your journey, you had to heal yourself so that you can also be a better parent. So, one of the things that people don't understand also is that when you are born with a certain DNA. So, in most cases, your DNA can have with a genetic imprint of trauma on it. And I always say, besides even a lot of things, just for a woman to give birth naturally or whether it's cesarean, it's a traumatic experience, not only for the woman who's giving birth, but for the child also, because they have to push, they are pressured by the walls of the civics and everything. And the time the child is here and they are crying, we see it as a sign to say, this child is alive. But already this child is saying, what did I just go through? And that on its own has a traumatic experience. We might take it light, but it does. And in your journey there, already when you are passed on to earth, you already passed through some level of pressure of something. So as your journey, you grow up, then you grow up in a family where there's no level of support. There's no level of security. There's no level of safety. So you then carry that, but you don't know as to whether your parents, where do they come from in terms of their own well-being? What work have they been doing? What emotions have they been suppressing? Because one of the studies that are coming out now is the fact that a lot of people who have mental health issues as a form of not being able to regulate the emotions jabona and where they find themselves is as a result of having sicknesses such as your heart, having high blood pressure, having hypertension. Those is high levels of chronic stress that show up in the physical aspect as a disease or a chronic of some sort. And other people might think maybe it's the food, maybe it's the lifestyle, but not understanding that it's actually your well-being. Are you mentally healthy? Are you mentally safe? So now when we start about a conversation of healing generationally, we need to then start to say, as much as I find myself here, I'm able to heal. What about the things that transpired to me? Was it by coincidence? Was it by chance? Or was this person trying to navigate life the best possible way they know how? And in most cases, that would be our parents in reflection. And when you look at it, you might find that the harsh conditions they were raised in is as a result of how they parent, and they are thinking they are doing the best that they can. But if you sit down and actually unfold or unpack or debrief with where they come from, their journey, you might find that, oh, now I understand why my mom is overprotective or my dad is overprotective. It's because maybe the little boy or little girl is trying to shield themselves of something they experience, and now they are thinking maybe they're doing justice to me, but they're also inflicting the harm and not knowing how to do it. But the best possible way is creating authenticity, having an authentic conversation with those people, to invite them into a space where you say, this is where I come from. This is where I'm at. I don't blame you. It has nothing to do about you. But what is your experience so that I can understand where you come from and I meet you there?
And also by healing ourselves, we're healing the previous generation, because they see in us what we are doing better. And believe you me, I know the old people who are looking up to us. Like they will say, wow, you are younger than me, but you are doing better. But going back to trauma, there is a way that we show up. And we always talk about my 2000 as dramatic generation, as I, I'm forgetting, like abalauleri in our language. We say like they you can't control them. They think the way they think, and there've been debates around the issue of they grow up being neglected. If you check, their parents are also young, and if you check our generation, maybe because I also have a 2000, so if you check our generation, perhaps we left so much. We were not there. We were not present, and this has shown in the high rate of gangsterism in schools. It's not safe to be in a high school now as a teacher. And how do we know for sure if like this is act of trauma? How do we know that my actions, this is trauma? How do we do those self reflection? I'm saying this because I personally didn't know that my actions were on as a result of trauma. It took me years of doing the internal work to really then be able to identify the difference between trauma response and me be me, and also seeing some of my characters that have developed as a result of trauma. How do we then help the society and the people to understand that this, because I have this approach. When I see a young girl or a young boy misbehaving, the first question that I ask is what happened to this person instead of why are they acting this way. So how do we then bring this awareness to the community to say, instead of saying why blaming, because we blame and judge, which is the first response, how do we then change our perspective to say what happened? Because I feel like if we go to what happened, it then answers and respond to so many challenges than going to judge and why.
You're creating a very, it's like an enlightening way of viewing life. I think it stems from if we as society start having conversations and changing the narrative by starting with accountability. That is the first key step of unlocking a lot of things.
Right.
Because when we are accountable, then as a parent, I would then ask to say, if my child is behaving like this, apart from what they are doing, which is the symptoms of the core issue, what am I doing as a parent? How is my parental approach? How is my parental style? How is my tone? The things that maybe I say to my child, is it the same things that I would appreciate if they are done to me? And not view it from an element of being a father figure or a mother figure and taking authority, but maybe on a level where you then want to transfer something different than that. Why do I say that? Because in a society where we look at Matuke, these are kids that are from, we are the mothers, right? And in most cases, it's a result of teenage pregnancy.
Yes.
With teenage pregnancy comes, here's a young girl, young boy, they have a child. They don't understand how to navigate parenthood. And at that age, they're not ready to step up being a mom, being a dad. They don't have the financial capacity or resources for that. What happens is that as a young girl, you end up raising the child alone,
Yeah,
right?
most cases.
And now, or maybe the granny takes over and so forth. In most cases, then the 2K kids come as a result where they don't even understand the proper structure of a family. That is one. Two, as a mom who is not even aware of certain things that they are doing wrong, how do I then come and say, my child, this is how you do it?
Yeah.
Three, because of the traumatic experience of being a young parent, you can also navigate parenthood because you feel judged yourself. You're not sure what you're doing is correct or not. And therefore, it creates a complexity where it's perpetual. Even the child does not know how to respond.
Yeah.
I usually say to people that we give birth because our children become a lesson of certain things that we needed and they highlighted.
Yeah.
So they become forward. They want to be independent. They want to create their own money. Life is at a fast rate when it comes to them.
Yeah.
But basically it's because they are saying, I'm doing something that you couldn't
Yeah.
at a certain point in your journey. And when you look at it, you feel like this child is retaliating. But if you say, wait a minute, when I was at this age of this child, or this is something I lack, how can I potentially learn it from my daughter? How can we put it in a way where you try to structure so that your child understands that this is an acceptable behavior, but do it in a way that won't harm you? So those are some of the things that we need to start engaging in and taking accountability so that we can understand that where we are headed, where we are, it's a conversation that builds up to the people that we are becoming for our kids and for the society at large.
Something that you spoke about that touched me so much is accountability. Like, I feel like as parent, we always have like, I can't apologize to my kids. I personally feel like it's very important to see that you were wrong. It's okay to be wrong as a parent. I say to people that there's no manual to parenting. We always do the best that we think is the best and is the best for us at that time. But as we grow and as we engage, as we see things, we see them better, and then we start to see them the other better side of what we thought was best. So I always say it's okay to do what you know is best for that time. And one of the thing is parenting. Parenting is a very trickiest thing that it's a task at itself. It's also another traumatic thing to be a parent, because also the fact that you will parent three kids that comes with three different characters, like they're not your kids, all of them. Like it's like you take from three different households. Like it's what gives me like wow. But we do our best and we do what we think is best at the time. The other thing that is coming through as you speak is the fact that, you know, the 2000s are so exposed also to add to what we say. They're so exposed to things, and it's possible my kids will come to me and tell me things that I'm not aware of, but then they are correct information. So maybe we need to accept that we will learn from them, because they are something that they come with different things. And I don't know how this comes in, but the fact that they are so angry that it's a very concerning issue, that they have aggressive behavior. And when you go to this house and house, you realize that eh, these kids, they're angry. Like you will see when you go to the next household, they will say, no man, my daughter reacts like they're twins, like they're born from the same parent. I don't know. Could this say we are not listening to them enough? Could this say we are silencing them? Could this? What does it say in terms of the mental thing?
What it highlights most importantly, Kate, is that when you give birth, right, to a child, they inherit who you are as parents. And when they inherit that, at a certain point in time in your journey, you might find that there were emotions you suppressed because you did not understand, you are not aware. And as the kids grow up, they inherit that from just that, not because you as a parent have done something, and they grow up with those emotions already. And the frustrating sometimes aspect of it is that a lot of people cannot even label correctly their emotions. So we are dealing with someone who maybe is sad constantly and is angry, but we label it as that. But when you go deep, you find that this person is not necessarily anger per se. It's a wound that is lying there, and that wound, comes up as a level of anger in terms of their emotions. And now you go in a household, you try to treat anger. So, what is causing anger? It means that this person was irritated by something, they were frustrated, and now they're angry. But we treat the wrong thing. You find that the child has an underlying wound that comes from somewhere that you don't even know. And some of the things also, I think, I want to tie it back to within our Black communities. We are not aware of the mental health issues that are there. So a person can have depression and you would not know. And one of the key things that I now start to see is bipolar disorder.
Yeah.
A person might have bipolar, and it might be misinterpreted as this child is acting out because they don't understand the variety on the spectrum of the symptoms that the child is showing. The child might be autistic and they might not pick it up. A child might be dyslexic and not be able to read properly. But to a parent, it's like this child.
Domo, all those kind of comments.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So also, how do we then, with podcasts like this, Kate, where you are going to create the awareness to say, but this is key issues that are affecting kids, and it's not necessarily because the child is like that, but there is an underlying issue. And if we label it correctly, we are able to help the child.
That
The
is very
violence,
key.
yes, the violence that we see in schools, it's as a result of the high GBV rates that we see in the world. So these kids, remember, kids learn from modeling. It's things that they see, they regard as acceptable. Raping, this is something where someone feels like this is something I can do because I've seen it happen. Especially with the power of social media,
Yeah.
it makes everything
Easy.
accessible. And that's how young kids are exposed to a lot of wrong things and they make it more acceptable and it becomes the
And
norm.
the secondary trauma, like if you go, social media is very violent. Social media is very violent. I try so much to avoid the violent part of social media. And you can imagine how our kids, our young ones are so, they're so glued to their phone. So you can really imagine the secondary trauma that they are experiencing themselves. You know, when you speak of people not understanding that people are going through things, I remember when I had my mental episodes and everything. I had mental episodes and I'll go be admitted, and the stigma that comes with it also, like to say warafa, you are mad, this you are acting up, because like you get those kind of comments to say you are acting up, and we are so much afraid to be associated with mental health professionals, because the minute I'm seen with you at a hospital, you're a psychologist, then it means I'm crazy or something. We really need to do some real work, and together as a community, and with you, with people like you who comes with expertise, and people who had experienced these things, and they know how it feels to be misunderstood, because I was misunderstood for so long. But I was diagnosed with bipolar. Yes, I was diagnosed with bipolar, and but I worked, and it was a journey. It was a journey. I always say it's very important to heal. And one thing I can say about healing, as we go to the next conversation, is like healing is very tricky. I always say this to people. You can just leave it in the middle and say, you know what, I'm done. I speak as a very healed person, but I'm still healing. I'm still doing the internal work. I still have my therapist on call. I still have a life coach on call, because I can't do this alone. I've realized that we take life so easy, but we get overwhelmed and everything becomes so much. So healing is a journey that is very necessary. What do you say to healing? And I know there's no time frame to healing. I can't say there's a time frame to healing, because I've been healing and I'm still healing.
Healing is a journey. It's really a journey that you become intentional about. And it's something that you need to initiate so that it happens.
Yeah.
And when you say healing is a must, I love that, because when you then start the journey of healing, you are saying, I am accepting myself, I am accepting my situation, and I'm allowing myself to see life and move forward
Yeah.
from this point. And the reason why it becomes a progress is life happens literally every day.
Yeah.
You cannot be guaranteed what is going to happen in the next minute.
Yeah.
That is maybe a trauma to already what you already have. So, meaning that I always advise people, create time within your day to self reflect. When you self reflect, you give yourself the power to heal, because you then take note of the things that were heavy and overwhelming to you. And if you are not okay, what are you willing to do tomorrow
Yeah.
to make sure that you're in a better position?
Yeah.
So live life from an angle where you learn. Always be hungry and curious to learn, and you will see that the healing journey is something that works
Yeah,
out.
you just spoke to my mind. Like, I take healing as finding better mechanism to cope. Because healing doesn't say, because you went through this, it's not going to happen to you again. While you're still finding your feet in the trauma or anything, something similar happens. I used to say life doesn't stop because you are healing. Life proceeds, and a very same thing can happen to you while you're still learning, while you're still healing from it. I was healing from being a teenage mother, and my daughter became a teenage mother at the same age. That also became a very traumatic event, because it was like, but why is this repeating itself? It looked like a generational curse, because now I'm like, but I was here and I went through this, and now this is repeating itself through my daughter. I think it's all about finding best mechanic, best way to deal with the issue, but it does not mean it's not gonna happen. So that's part of healing. So I know that when I do my therapist and everything, I get better coping mechanism. And with your work of transforming leaders and consciously becoming and all of that, what are the things that you do? What is the intentional and work that you're doing with your clients that helps them to heal?
The first step of healing is that you start to realize when people are hurt, when people are uncertain of the next point in their journey, they have problems in relation to, let's start with sleep.
Yeah.
That is the first element. If you're not sleeping properly, there's no way you can heal
Yeah.
at an emotional or psychological level. If you are not eating well, you cannot fully potentially heal, because certain things that you eat will still trigger and make you fall into episodes of chronic stress, hypertension, having suicidal ideations coming just from food on its own.
I was not aware of that.
Yes. And then also, when a person does not have a healthy lifestyle, I mean exercising, being conscious with self-care. Those are the critical things that are actually required. So in the journey of consciously becoming, to be able to transform and fully heal, the mechanisms that are used is to try and assess, where are you at this current point in time? When we find out where you are at, then we say, okay, before we can be able to assist the mind and the heart to regulate and become aligned and connected, let's start by sleeping better. Let's start by eating better. Let's start by exercising.
Yeah.
And once we get that right, we say, okay, now let us start to unpack the journey. With the tools that we want to initiate of healing, is to saying, now I need to start with acceptance. How do we then accept? Accepting is saying, I'm taking power in my story and allowing it not to be a hindrance, but to be something that can transform my journey. So we highlight the things that you always saw as negative in your story, and we bring the positivity out of it to say, these are the angles that you've missed. Yes, you could have been assaulted at some point, but the strength that you carried, the confidence, you being able to speak out, that is you using your voice. Why don't you look at that instead of looking at the story as a sexual assault story? And then once you then start to regain the strength and power around that, then you use those labels to empower yourself and move forward through your journey, knowing that, yes, things could have happened to me. I'm not a victim, but I'm a victor of my story.
Or a survivor. Like the changing the language that you call yourself. I feel also for me to move forward in terms of everything, I stopped blaming myself also. And because you spend so much time in blaming yourself, in saying, if I didn't do this, I was 9 years when I was sexually assaulted, and I was in my home where I was supposed to be safe. So there's absolutely nothing that I could have done better. But you end up having especially when you're told, "Bo unyaka lo wena." I'm like, a 9-year old, what can a 9-year old want? You get it? But then we get to a point where even the society will judge how a girl was wearing. The first thing that when we say someone was sexually assaulted, we ask, what were they wearing? I personally don't think it has nothing to do with what they were wearing, because even older women who are wearing their robe and dukes and everything, they still get assaulted. So I don't think you could have done anything that better to prevent the situation. I think that was my first. And my second was, perhaps this is a purpose for me to heal others. This happened for a reason, so that I can also, that's why we are having these conversations, to say, this was not a mistake for it to happen to me. It happened because it had to happen, and to me, because I carried enough energy or enough power to carry this through, to take it through, or to do something about it, to be able to heal the next person. So you need to understand that it was not a mistake that it happened, so that you forgive yourself and be able to open a next chapter. The other thing about healing is that if you don't close that chapter of blame, shame, and everything, you never really move to the next chapter. You find yourself rounding as a cycle because you didn't take the important lessons that I feel like every tragedy has lessons that you need to take from and move to the next thing. It's about moving forward, but not dismissing what happened to you, acknowledging it, embracing it, but using it as your power to move forward, not as something that is going to take you down and destroy you. So that's what worked for me. I so much wish that many people can find strength in my story. Actually, that's why I feel so empowered to speak about my experience, because there are so many people who went through what I went, but they did not come out. And it's because they didn't do the internal work. So that's why I say healing is a must. And sometimes we feel we are okay. We feel like because I was not sexually assaulted, because nothing happened to me, then I'm okay. But we don't speak of the inner child traumas that we had, the generational traumas that we had. We will speak about this one day, financial trauma. Like we speak so much loosely about it. If you can speak, you can look even in the Black economy, we are struggling financially because the trauma attached to our forefathers' financial trauma. But one day we will speak to it. So it's more not only about no, I was sexually assaulted, then I need to heal. I feel like actually healing should be for everyone, not because you had trauma, but just heal from how you were raised, how life happened. I don't know if I'm wrong.
You're making a very valid point. And as you're speaking, I realize something that is critical. We talk about the healing point of the victim, but what about the healing point of the victor?
Yeah.
The person who has also violated you requires some level of healing.
Yes.
And if we attach this, I don't want to make it about gender, but we go back and saying, what is happening to the boy child?
Yeah.
Wherever they find themselves, in which whatever environment they are. Remember, in a Black society, you grow up, they say, "Monna ke nku o llela teng." And that is simply saying you don't need to show vulnerability, you don't need to cry.
Yeah.
What happens to the emotions of a young Black child or any other child at large who is actually male? How do then they navigate those spaces of trying to heal? Is our society accommodating towards their healing? And when we engage in issues such as GBV, high levels, rates of spermicide,
How do we bring them in?
that is a symptom of the greater wound. And the world is saying, we want to treat GBV. But the question is, when they kill people, whether we don't want to put it into gender specifics,
Yeah.
but all those things that are happening, the real conversation is, where did it all go wrong? We have lost how things are being done now within
Yeah.
our society when it comes to culture, when it comes to a level of identity and understanding ourselves. People cannot position themselves. Remember, a man is known for provision.
Yeah.
A man is known for providing safety.
Yeah.
But that is different today.
It's changed a lot.
You find even women providing, which is linked on
Yeah.
provision. They are the providing the safety. Where does that leave the man in the conversation? Because they also need the healing. So when you talk about issues like that, it takes me to say, this is actually a powerful platform
For us to speak of.
for all of us to actually
together.
heal together.
Yeah.
And not only basing it on gender, but to say we are all challenged in our different ways. And how can we possibly heal together so we can create a better narrative in terms of where we find ourselves? You, as the victor, what is your story to be in this position? And for the victim, this is where the victim is coming from. And together, how can we possibly heal together?
And maybe like the biggest contribution to GBV is the socialization, how we socialize. And it obviously comes from what is it that, how are we showing up? What is it that we carry? What is beneath our smiles? those kind of things. That's why it's a main contributing factor how we socialize. My only worry, which we'll also touch the other day, my only worry with the approach to GBV is that it's becoming a fight between men and women. It's like men are correct, right? Women are correct. I feel like we need a space where we come together and work together in fighting. There's not a movement of men and a movement of women separately. I feel like that's where we are going. And I don't know, a topic for another day, but I feel like we need to talk about it. But we have socialization problems and start in our families, especially now with social media, with phones, with everything. We are always on our phones. Even couples, they can be in the same room but not together. So those are the issues that are very serious and everything. But we will create authentic conversations. It's here to create more spaces, more conversational cycles for us to really unpack these issues and proceed and then go back, go and see solutions together as a society. It's not only for Kate, it's for everyone who relates to the issues that we'll be talking about here and everyone who find themselves in the conversations that we are talking about. I am so happy to have you here today. And I was hoping maybe you can tell us where do we find you? Where do we find you? And how can they access you if they are looking for your services?
Okay, so Consciously Becoming, we have an office. We are based in Mokopane currently, which is 109 Reiter Road, which is in our town. But we also offer online services, so people can find us at Consciously Becoming, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. We also have a website. We also have a booking site. We also have a WhatsApp business, which is on 067 874 3454, where a person can simply WhatsApp and then we'll promptly respond to offer our services.
Thank you very much, Sis Dipuo. Today was very impactful, and I believe that everyone who's watching today, they will get something out of this, and then it will really transform their life. I appreciate you taking time to join us today. And just for the viewers, remember, guys, we're shooting from Mabagengi Cafe and Restaurant just under N11. I don't know what to say, whether to say it's Masodi or Ramadiba, but it's in between the two villages. I know you guys are viewing it on their social media, Mawageng Cafe and Restaurant. It's a very nice place. You should come and try it. And then they're having nice on-house cocktails that I really enjoyed today. So guys, please come and check out this place. And thank you very much, Ceci Dipuo. And thank you for tuning in. We are looking forward to the next episode.
Thank you.